Whataboutism. You probably heard about it. So, what about that? People ask questions beginning with what about all the time. It depends on when and how it's being used, of course, and I understand, like, the whataboutism crowd has been making people really hostile to questions beginning with what about. But that can still be useful if it's in an appropriate setting for the appropriate purpose. The reason people ask questions beginning with what about is to try and bring attention to things that others are not paying attention to. At work, this is great. And, if you're in a work setting, that's great, unless your work involves politics and government. Then, especially if you're in a political position where you are expected to debate, questions beginning with what about are almost entirely done in bad faith to dismiss arguments or distract from them. Whataboutism is, I'm just gonna get the fancy talk out of the way. It's a two-quack fallacy. It is an appeal to hypocrisy. It's trying to make the person that is presenting an argument look like they are not as innocent as they seem. And that's a bad faith argument. We're all humans, we all have flaws. So, here's a type of scenario that probably happened in the real world. Someone at a restaurant just got a phone update and they're with their friend. And it's about a police officer killing an unarmed black man, which happens way more often than it should. The person looking at their phone is like, "Did you hear about this?" Their friend says yes when their friend is shown the headline, and, they say, "It's a shame the police keep killing all these black people." And this is an expression, like, she's just saying how she feels about the matter. But there's someone else in that restaurant that has a problem. They could, at their own table, give their own opinion. This is the sort of thing that happens in Minnesota a lot. But that's not good enough for this asshole. They have to walk up to her table, slap their hands down and say, "Yeah, but what about white people who get killed by police officers?" Here's what this asshole is expecting. They're expecting the woman who said the thing she just said to say something like, "Well, yeah, that's a problem," without going any further, or, "Yeah, that is a thing, but," and then she brings up facts and statistics, and she goes on websites or something, and, she's being defensive about it. She is defending her position against the asshole. But no matter how she does that, he is distracting from the original point. So, that's not a good approach. So, when you are presented with this type of what-about-ist question, and it doesn't always begin with what about, but when you're presented with this type of guy, coming to you and begging for this type of debate, what should you do? What is the answer to whataboutist questions? I'm gonna pause and let you think about that for a bit, alright? And we're back. So, what is the answer to whataboutism? How do you answer whataboutism? Well, you don't! You don't give them an answer. So, think of it this way. The guy who said, what about white people who get killed by police officers? That is done in bad faith. That is done to distract. So that's the question. What's their answer to that? Did they even think of an answer? And even if they did, is it a good answer? So yeah, when you're given this type of whataboutist question, you hit them with the Uno reverse card of arguing. Like, they go, what about on you? And you say, yeah, what about that? What about the white people being killed by police officers? What should we do about that? And yeah, that's all you have to do. And when you do it like that, you're still dominating the discussion. You're making them come up with an answer. And you can pretty much expect that it's not going to be a good answer if they give one, which you might have to press them for that answer a bit. You know, what should we do about that? What's your answer to this? What should we do about police officers killing white people? Because that does happen. But yeah, they don't have a response. And even if they do, it's like either going to be some general canned nonsense. They could just say, well, crime is rampant or something, which isn't a real answer. Or they would say something like, well, don't you think? But even then, you can Uno reverse again with, yeah, maybe, or a flat out no. You could just say no and leave it at that. But, like, you could be like, yeah, or maybe. And then again, what do you think we should do about that? It's brilliant, and it works with everything. Like, if they bring up, what about Venezuela? Just hit them with that reverse card. What about Venezuela? What should be done about Venezuela? What can we do about Venezuela? What can Venezuela do about Venezuela? It's not like they have an answer. It's not like they can justify what they did. You know, like, the people asking the question should have a prepared answer for this what about question, but they don't. And even if they do, then you have to make them argue in good faith. You have to have a reasonable debate. And they're not interested in doing that. That's not what whataboutism is about. So, yeah, that's the thing. And even if the whatabout is an outright lie, like if it's about the election and they are like, what about this thing that I saw but hasn't been verified or has been disproven, and if they're like that, you can, you could say, okay, instead of saying, okay, what about that, you just replace that with, okay, if that's true, what about? Or so, if that's true, what about that? What should we do about that? Again, they don't have a good answer. It could be like, oh yeah, well, we could have more monitoring or ID laws, but again, they're not addressing the original point. They're giving something vague. So yeah, and the whole whataboutism thing, up to this point, it has been a bigger weapon than all the guns combined in getting nonsense policies and politicians in power and in effect. But if they don't have that anymore, what about that? So that's the Minnesota perspective on whataboutism. If it's not political, if it's not politically motivated and it's not done in bad faith, that's not whataboutism. It's just a question beginning with what about. But, it's really obvious when, they want to inject doubt into what you just said or expressed or argued. So that is whataboutism. And now that you know what to do about that, what's going to happen? What about that? I look forward to seeing you in the next video. And also, with that knowledge and giving you the tools, I want to have a debate with Ben Shapiro about voting rights. I challenge him to that. I dare him to do that. I know that I'm not a AAA plus YouTuber, like, I've been getting less than 10 views a video, but that should make me an easy target then. So go tell Ben Shapiro that I want to have a debate with him about voting rights. Let me know what he thinks, if he even responds, which I certainly hope he does. Take care and have an awesome life.